Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Collier, and I will be chairing today's meeting of the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission. I want to go over a couple things before we get started. There have been some slides that have been playing overhead, but just to kind of walk everybody through our procedures for today's meeting, Planning Commission received this packet in the mail a little over a week ago and has had the opportunity to review it in advance of today's meeting. And so at times throughout the meeting, we do move fairly quickly. So follow along on the agenda closely so that you know where we're at. I'll read off all the case numbers. When I do, if you're here and you've got questions, concerns, or you're here in opposition in regards to a case, I'm going to ask for you to raise your hand. If you're here and you're one of those people and you want to speak, please make sure to raise your hand. Otherwise, I will not know to call on you and give you an opportunity to speak. The same goes for the applicant. I'll ask if the applicant's here. I'll ask if there's any opposition here. If there's no opposition and Planning Commission chooses to, we can rule on the case without hearing from the applicant or opposition if we've got a staff recommendation to approve. When we do have opposition here and they want to speak, we'll first hear from the applicant. The applicant will come up to the mic and have 7 minutes to present their case. Make sure when you come up to the mic that you state your name and address for the record. After those 7 minutes are up, you don't have to use it all, but you've got 7 minutes total. Take a seat somewhere in the front row. If there's opposition here and opposition wants to speak, I do ask that you get out of your chair and line up on the left side of the room behind the speaker so that I can see how many people are here and how many people want to speak, because we have a total of 9 minutes allotted for opposition. And from time to time, I've got to interrupt people and cut them off so that we can hear from everybody that wants to speak. After that 9 minutes for opposition is up, the applicant will have 2 minutes to get up and respond to any comments or questions that have been raised by opposition. All the conversation that takes place today will be between the Planning Commission and the person at the podium and staff. And so just make sure that when you're at the podium and you're speaking, you're directing any questions or comments towards the Planning Commission. After we've heard from the applicant and opposition, Planning Commission will take action. Most of what we do here today will be a recommendation to either City Council or County Commission for further action. Make sure to follow the follow-up dates on those. There should be a handout out there somewhere where you've got those follow-up dates for what we do today, the recommendations that we make. Mr. Schultz, are there any withdrawals or anything that we need to be aware of today?
Nothing I'm aware of.
Did you have anything to add to that, or did I get it?
No, I think covered everything well. Just on the screen, just a reminder. We'll talk about it later on the agenda, but in case anybody's interested, first thing, this Wednesday, May 10th at 1 p.m. in the DRC building, conference room 2B, we'll be holding a meeting to talk about street standards and the City of Chattanooga subdivision regulations. That means open for anybody who wants to attend to voice either support or opposition to our the draft standards on streets.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. All right, first item on our agenda is election of officers. I'd entertain a motion for both a chairman and a vice chairman. The motion that has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And for vice chair? Second. We have a motion and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. All right, we'll jump into the agenda. First item is item 1 on our agenda under subdivision plats and variances is SD 2023-0014, and this is preliminary plat, lots 1 through 42 of Heron Square subdivision. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve. Second. And it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2023-0015, and this is Knoll Park subdivision, lots 1 through 36, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve that has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2023-0016. This is Hamilton Lake subdivision lots 1 through 195 and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 on our agenda, case SD 2023-0017, is Prairie Pass Phase 6 subdivision lots 177 through 185. This has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2023-0018. This is preliminary plat for Middle Valley Phase 1 subdivision lots 1 through 95. It has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 on our agenda, case SD 2023-0019. London Woods Phase 1 subdivision lots 1 through 40 and 85 through 89. As a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, first item under old business is case 2023-0045. And this is located at 2001 Hollister Road. Staff is recommended to deny the applicant's request and approve other with conditions. Mr. Schultz, can you jog our memory on this?
Sure. This was submitted last month. It was deferred for 30 days at the applicant's request. We did receive opposition last month as well as this month. I think you should have a Google sheet in front of you that has the opposition's concerns, but this was a case to rezone this property from O1 and R2 to C2. This is the request in Hollister Road. It's about 230 feet to the north of Taft Highway. It has single-family detached dwellings to the north and northeast, commercial to the south, and vacant land to the west. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site. This is a view of Hollister Road looking north. This is east of the site, a single-family detached dwelling. This is south of the site, Hollister Road and Taft Highway. This is south of the site across Taft Highway. You can see some more commercial uses. This property is in the Walden's Ridge Plateau Plan, which was adopted in 1997. It recommends commercial uses. It also has a plan goes that commercial should be balanced to maintain rural mountain character. Commercial node development is encouraged instead of strict commercial development. Again, this plan is from 1997. It's currently undergoing a new planning process. That plan has not been adopted. Staff recommendation is a portion of the request is compatible with the Walden's Ridge Plateau Area Plan for a commercial center at this intersection. Staff recommends rezoning the O1 district portion of the site to C3 with conditions related to uses to ensure compatibility with the surrounding land uses and denying the R2 portion, keeping that as the currently zoned to serve as a buffer between the proposed use and the abutting single family. So staff recommend to deny the applicant's request and approve other, which is to approve only the O1 portion to C3 with condition of office, single family and 2-family dwellings, barber and beauty shops, RV and boat storage only. Sales and services of RVs, boats, and vehicles are prohibited. So staff recommends again to only approve the O1 for C3 with conditions and keep the R2 as zoned.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Are there any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Mr. Lehman.
And Brian, so I like to look at things from a transition. So, I mean, obviously the C3 and the O1 and then an R1 is an appropriate transition. I know that staff is recommending the R2A in the back to stay R2A to provide that transition. I'm just curious if any thought was given, I guess, to that single family lot, because now we will have C3, adjacent to that single family.
Right. I think that's what we were trying to keep, that as a buffer between that C3, which is you're talking about.
Well, I guess all I'm wondering is, I understand the thought on the R2A, but the O1, if it goes all C3, there won't be a transition.
Right to that one property.
Okay.
They'll have to do a landscape buffer.
And what is that landscape?
I think it's a 30-foot buffer
30 foot from a C
from a C commercial to
to
residential.
residential. Okay, thank you.
Is there any opposition present? All right. Any applicants present? Do you want to speak? Come on up.
Hey, my name is Ben Peppers, looking to purchase this property and rezone it for expanding the use of storage, which is on the adjacent property right here. The reason why we don't want to go with the recommendation from the planning commission is that if we put an R2A piece back there and we landlock it in, we're basically just killing this whole back piece of property, which is about a little over 2 acres, just to create a buffer. That's an awful excessive buffer between us and the back, the neighboring properties. So what we're wanting to do is stick with the existing buffers, which is compliant with I think it's 25 feet or 30 feet off of it. We can't really use a lot of that back property anyways. It's kind of low lying anyhow. So making it all R2A just kind of landlocks it and kills that piece of property for perpetuity. So we have had an on-site meeting, public meeting with everyone, the neighbors, kind of came out and described what we're going to do. It's all C3 on this side of the road, all in front of us anyways. We've got a 20-foot easement that comes across where the old restaurant was that burned down right there, that we're going to enter in off Taft Highway. We're not entering in off Hollister. All this comes in from the front, kind of like it currently is. It's currently storage building there now with outdoor storage. We're looking to continue that and do more outdoor storage right behind the gas station.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant before we hear from opposition? All right. Thank you. You can come on up.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your consideration here. My name is Rachel Trout. I live at 1905 Hollister Road, right behind the area here. So we moved to Signal Mountain because we love this rural setting, the community, and the schools, of course. But the home we selected checked all the boxes for us, including the amazing backyard where we spend the majority of our time when the weather allows. If 2001 Hollister Road is rezoned to commercial C3, even with the currently proposed use as an RV boat storage, once it's rezoned, anything under that classification could be built there now and in the future. So we're thinking future as well. If this doesn't work out, it's resold, anything of that nature. So this classification could also devalue our largest investments and assets, which are our homes. We have several concerns with the proposed rezoning and use. Last month at the first hearing, we submitted 68 signatures. Today, I have 24, which I've just submitted. Some are new, some are repeats, and they were all gained either at that April 26th meeting with Mr. Peppers and our residents and since. I was unable to go door to door this month like last time I did. So there's fewer, but you still have all the signatures and emails from our concerned residents. Some of the reasons: decline in property value, as our home is our largest investment and was purchased as our forever home, our house, as well as the Dabneys, the Rileys, the McCanns, all in directly proportionate to this property, and the McIntoshes. As far as security goes, strangers will be coming and going 24/7 with no on-site security per Mr. Peppers. Water, as it was presented to us, that a 2-walled roofed building would be placed on the site with the walls visible from Taft and Umbarger, meaning that the roof is sloped, and all of that water, unless there is a gutter, that water will be coming down toward the homes on Umbarger and Hollister. We already have water with the amount of rain that we've been getting, which is only going to probably continue to increase with climate, whole nother issue there. But we are concerned that unless there is a gutter and water containment or storage or runoff that's good that it will affect our property. And we all have crawl space runoff, sump pumps already. Also, as far as trash and litter, it's already an issue on Hollister Road because of MAPCO. But we feel that with RVs and boats filling up at that MAPCO before they're heading out, that could inevitably lead to more trash in our yards. As far as road use, everyone who lives on Signal Mountain and Walden's Ridge already knows that the roads coming up are narrow, curvy, twisty, and usually under repair for stabilization. Adding large RVs and boats coming up and going down these roads, we do not feel is a good idea. Not to mention that RVs and boats leaving that storage facility, although that would be coming in and out of Taft, are probably going to pull into the MAPCO, fill up, and the only way to get back out then is through our Hollister Road entrance from Taft. Gas, oil, and engine fluids. There is a Blue Line Creek on this property, which leads to Fairmount Branch, then to Marshall Creek, and then becoming Falling Water Creek. There will inevitably be gas, oil, and engine fluids leaking from these RVs and boats that are stored, which could wash into the Blue Line Creek and end up damaging the ecosystem and soil along these waterways. As far as a fire hazard, and I did submit this as well, boats and RVs and storage can be fire hazards and cause explosions, especially if batteries are not disconnected. A Google search for RV fires, you're going to find numerous results. Fire is a leading cause of RV loss and incidents that can occur when parked, and an RV can burn completely within 10 minutes. The National Fire Protection Association estimates that 6,000 RV fires occur annually in the U.S., and about half of those occur while the vehicle is stationary, 35% of which are caused by electrical shorts and faulty wiring. Now this, given that it's right beside a MAPCO and a gas fueling station, is cause for concern that it could be catastrophic to the Dabneys, myself, all of those within this area. It was scary enough when the restaurant burned down. Now you're adding explosives with gasoline and fuel right beside that. And just note that those averages were pre-pandemic numbers from 2007 to 2017. And as we all know, RV travel has increased since then. So these percentages are probably less than what they would be today. At the end of the April 26th meeting with Ben Peppers, Colin Johnson, who was also there, did mention an idea of increasing the 25-foot buffer to, I believe it was 40 feet, which, while this is generous and literally very much appreciated by all of the residents who were there and the property owners, the real question and the reason we're here today is, should 2001 Hollister Road be rezoned to commercial? And our answer to that is no. It should not be rezoned. There's numbers of ways to use the current lot as is zoned, including you could put 3 to 4 very nice residential homes with a tree buffer facing those commercial properties that are already there, which we all knew was there anyway when we bought our homes, but not this property. It was not zoned commercial. So I sincerely hoped that this process with Mr. Peppers would have fostered some conversations about that. Pat St. Charles owns 2 lots on Umbarger. Curate owns several backing up to that. And I really do think that a residential solution could be obtained for this property. I mean, Mr. Collier, you might even be interested in building there. It's a nice lot, 4.5 acres. It was said in the April meeting that the property had been for sale for a while.
There's a couple behind you that wants to speak, and we've only got 3 minutes remaining. Do you mind giving them an opportunity to speak?
Okay, so one thing is Mr. Peppers did say that he lives nearby, which on Signal, that's a relative thing. He does live 1.5 miles from this, or 1.1 mile from this property. And no matter which way he comes up the mountain or around, he does not have to drive past this. It is in our backyards. He asked who wants to live there. Well, we do. We already do. And we've invested in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tony Wheeler, 1831 Lewis Mine Road, Signal Mountain. My primary concern is the precedent that this sets on the road. Highway 127 is already, as been mentioned, under a great deal of peril, and this will only add to those issues. I hope that the commission understands that incremental growth is just as bad as massive growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peppers. You've heard the concerns from the neighbors. Anything you'd like to add?
I feel like we're already in a commercial corridor here when there's a Dollar General across the street, a water company, there's an excavation company. It's all zone C2 across the street. My two neighbors on either side are C3. If they're worried about a fire burning down, the Mexican restaurant just burned down next to the gas station. Nothing, it didn't catch on. I mean, I don't see it happening. Obviously, we're going to follow all the safe practices to handle all that.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Peppers?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Peppers, you obviously, you said you don't own the property yet, but you're under contract to purchase it, I guess, based on the results of the rezoning.
Correct.
And if this was to be approved with the recommendations by RPA staff, would you move forward with the purchase?
So not with the keeping the back as R2A, because it would obviously just landlocks that property and I wouldn't be able to utilize any of it. And the buffer would be even more standing off of it. So one continuous zoning makes a lot more sense for it, obviously with every other property around it, zone C3. Because I can't go back there and build any houses on an R2A property that you have to go through a commercial to get into.
Mr. Chair, I move to deny.
We have a motion to deny. Second. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Schultz, this will be before what body?
County Commission.
County
next
Commission.
month.
And do they know the dates?
It's 9:30 in the same room on the second Wednesday in June. Let me see what that date is. Should be a sheet back there, but it should be June 14th at 9:30 in this same meeting room.
Thank you. All right, first item under new business is a mandatory referral. It's item 1 on our agenda under new business. And it's mandatory referral 2023-0061. This is the unnamed right-of-way, 7400 block of Shallowford Road. And it's a right-of-way closure and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve. And it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, that 7400 block that's transposed should be 4700 block,
Thank you.
just for the record.
Next case is 2023-0062, and it's located at 907 Arlington Avenue and 911, 915, 919 Taylor Street. And it's an application to rezone from R1 to UGC. Staff is recommended to deny UGC and approve R3. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? That's unusual. So I'm just going to read it back off just to make sure that if the applicant's present, we know this is the Arlington Avenue, 907 Arlington Avenue, and 911, 915, and 919 Taylor Street. Is the applicant present? All right, what's the will of the commission? We have a motion and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case, item 3 on our agenda, case 2023-0063 is located at 5619 Clark Road. And this is a rezone from R3 temporary zone with conditions to R3 permanent zone with conditions, and staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? We do have a motion. It has been seconded. Is the applicant present? And are you comfortable with the conditions? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 on our agenda, case 2023-0064 is located at 7367 Hickson Pike and 7758 Evan Way. And this is an application to rezone from A1 to R1. Staff is recommended to approve the applicant's request. Is there any opposition present?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive one email in opposition.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is 2023-0065. This is located at 2519 Bailey Avenue, and it's an application to rezone from R2 to UGC. Staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Are you familiar with the conditions? Come on up. I'd like to hear your question and then hear from Mr. Schultz.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Jones with Stone Creek Consulting at 1112 Plymouth Road in Dunlap, Tennessee. The one question that I'd like for Planning Commission to consider is condition number 2 was to build a maximum of 2.5 stories or 35 feet, which is essentially a 3-story building. With the number of units that we're planning on having on this site, we're going to ask if the Planning Commission would consider a 4-story maximum height instead of the 3-story or the 35 feet. And then just clarity from Mr. Schultz, if you wouldn't mind. The number 3 is parking shall not be accessed from the primary street. I just wanted to just confirm that our parking is accessed from the alley and the alley is accessed from the primary street. Just want to make sure there wasn't any confusion when we go to permitting on that.
Thank you.
That's it.
Mr. Schultz.
Not codes enforcement, so I couldn't tell you what they say with number 3, but I think what we're trying to get at there is no parking lot shall front the primary street. You shouldn't actually cut into the parking lot. That was the intent behind that. The reason behind number 2, looking at the aerial map around these properties, it's all pretty much a story and a half of single family attached dwellings. You do have one house here that's a little further down, probably about 2 stories there. Everything in this general vicinity is 1.5 to 2 stories in height. This is the site itself. The number of units proposed is, in terms of density, is roughly 87.5 dwelling units per acre. It's a very small lot. It's 0.16 acres in size. Proposing 14 units on a smaller lot does shoot the density up. Here's an aerial view. You can see along Bailey Avenue again. Most of these are all 1.5 to 2 stories of single family detached dwellings. This is a 1-story office that's next door. That was the intent behind trying to limit the height to make it compatible with the primary single family detached units on Bailey Avenue. That was the intent behind the condition on height. It's for compatibility. And I think the plan, which is the new plan, was adopted in 2020, supports that recommendation of a smaller height.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the staff's recommendation. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 2023-0066, and this is located at 1130 East 14th Street. And it's an application to rezone from R3 to UGC with conditions. Staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? And is the applicant present? All right. Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, this is 2023-66. This is a request to rezone from R3 residential to UGC with conditions. Proposed use is multi-unit residential. That's 0.14 acres in size. Proposing 4 units. That's a density of 28.5 units per acre. Looking at the zoning map, there's a mixture of residential and commercial and industrial zones at this location. To the north of this property is R3, and further north you have UGC. Immediately abutting this property to the east is M1 Manufacturing. To the south of this side, abutting this property is UGC. So this request would be an extension of an adjacent similar zone, UGC. And to the west, this site is R3. Applicant did propose one condition, residential uses only. There's been no zoning history on this particular piece of property. However, to the south of this site in 2016, that was rezoned from M1 to UGC. Further south across the Main Street, there was some more property that was rezoned from M1 to UGC. So this area has seen a transition to UGC in the recent years. This is currently used as a single family dwelling. To the north of this property across the East 14th is single unit and 2-unit residential. To the east of this property is office and industrial. To the south is multi-unit residential, and to the west of the side is industrial. This is a picture of the dwelling that's on the property. Another view of the dwelling and the adjacent dwelling that's nearby. This is looking at East 14th Street, the sites for the blue house is. North of the site, more single-family attached dwellings. This is south of the site on East Main Street. I see some mixed-use commercial and multifamily. This is east of the site. West of the site, again, the site's the blue house. This property is in the historic River to Ridge plan, which is adopted in 2022, which has a mixed residential place type designation. You can see on the screen what that's designated there. The mixed use residential primarily uses include 2 to 6 living units, attached, cottage courts and courtyards, apartments, and multifamily. Here's a site plan that was submitted with the application with access off East 14th Street with 4 units. The request is generally compatible with Area 3 plan. It is compatible with adjacent land uses and development form. Staff does recommend conditions related to use and height to ensure compatibility. So staff recommends to approve with 2 conditions: residential uses only, a maximum building height of 3 stories. This is a little different one that we just saw, and that you have taller buildings nearby and you have industrial zones. So staff recommends to approve with 2 conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. We'll hear from the applicant.
Name is Alan Jones with Stone Creek Consulting. So I've reached out to a handful of the neighbors in this area, and also reached out to the neighborhood association. Neighborhood association didn't have any issues with our rezoning request from the R3 to UGC for these 4 units. With the property to the west of us, it is R3, but it's being used as a single family residence. So we will apply the 10-foot landscape buffer that would be required against a single family use, and being mindful of that. And then kind of look at the rest of the context in this area. You know, Main Street obviously is being seen with a lot of UGC as well around the 13th and 14th area with the improvements of the Stoveworks site that's been going up. And also just there's a lot of UGC that's being kind of built in this area between Main Street and where the cemetery is located. I think, you know, in the office next door is New Blue's construction's office. I think that's who's going to be speaking here today. But I think from a compatibility with this neighborhood and what we're seeing the trends in this area, I think this meets the intent of where this neighborhood is growing to. But I'll defer the rest of my time to the opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
My name is Stuart Gaines. As Alan said, I'm the next door neighbor to the east. My company, New Blue Construction, has been at that site since we bought the building in 2018 and rehabbed it in 19 and moved in late that year. You know, as a builder in the area and community, I certainly don't want to poo-poo development, and that's not my message today. But we do. You know, my company's there, and my wife and I own the parcel that is next door. And as Alan mentioned, Stoveworks up the street. We oppose the 3rd story. If you look at 14th Street by itself, which is a residential street, there's not precedent, in my view, and certainly not in the immediate block, either direction for 3 stories. A 3-story building there, you know, it's conjecture, but I suspect that the high price that was paid for these lots Top Flight just auctioned off a whole, you're going to hear more of this in the near future. A bunch of these just got auctioned off. Kevin Bowen bought something up the street. So you're about to see this corridor between Central and Holtzclaw get a lot of activity. And I think, and again, I'm all about urban infill. I'm all about, adaptive reuse, but we want, as a neighbor, we want to see that the development matches the neighborhood. And 14th Street is not Main Street. Behind us, we have 3-story apartments, and they're pointed out by staff. And yes, they are adjacent. But there's a pretty big difference between what happens on Main Street and 14th, in my view. And that picture right there kind of tells it. That's 3 stories. It feels, that's a big old building next to Ethan's old headquarters. It feels a little out of place, but that's Main Street. And next door, we're going to have, selfishly, it'll eat up our view out my own staff's westward facing windows. But I feel like long-term neighborhood thinking, it's not the best use. There's got to be a better way to go 2 stories here to find a better use of that parcel. Understand, again, trying to maximize what you're purchasing, but it's less than a 1/4 acre. And we don't feel like 3 stories is a good fit for the neighborhood. I'll point out, most of the neighbors up and down the street, a lot of them are rentals, right? A lot of them not English speaking folks. We've done birdhouse building workshop here in Maine by 24 and had some kids from the neighborhood in. There's families and kids up and down that street. And so there is a residential vibe on 14th that we want to see maintained. I think there's a certain amount of gentrification that's inevitable. What's going to happen between Central and Holtzclaw, right? But maximizing our ability to have studio apartments that we can charge $1,500 a month for, and it's just another way to, to gentrify the neighborhood, in my view. So I think thinking more about size and how it's appropriate to 14th Street. And last thing I'll say is I did speak to Charlotte Caldwell, who's the owner of Stoveworks, where I worked with Alan on that job. And we don't want to poo-poo development in this context of that, but she's an important neighbor and she wasn't aware of this. She didn't receive the letter about it. I don't want to speak for Charlotte, but I think she would have an opinion here. So I'd like to see another proposal. Appreciate y'all hearing what we have to say as a neighbor.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment. I understand the desire with the story height. But with this site already being zoned R3, we can already build 3 stories. The way the R3 reads is 2.5 stories to 35 feet. So if we do a flat roof, we can already do the 3 stories. The request for the zoning change is really to go from basically 2 units on the R3 now to do the 4 units. So either 2 larger units or the 4 smaller studio units. So that's, so that the height and the context is really compatible between the current zone and the proposed zone. We're really just looking at what the number of units is.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? Thank you. What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve with conditions, the conditions from staff, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next case, item 7 on our agenda is case 2023-0067, and this is located at 1108 Macaulay Avenue and an unaddressed 1100 block of Duncan Avenue. And this is an application to rezone from M2 and R3 to C2 Staff has recommended to deny the applicant's request and approve other with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? You familiar with the conditions that staff has recommended? Do you understand what, come up to the mic. I just want to make sure we're clear. Staff has recommended to deny your request and approve other with conditions. Are you amenable to that or no?
Yeah, that's fine. We have no preference. We were actually told during the pre-submittal meeting that we should rezone it to C2 because it's, as is with R3, it can't be used for parking for the commercial space because it's separated by an alley.
And you're familiar with the conditions that staff has recommended?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We're
thank you.
fine with
Go ahead.
Review GC for 1108 Macaulay and R4 for the 1100 block of Duncan. Would that allow the I see that there's a gym and apartments plan in this. Would that allow the applicant to build everything that he's seeking to build?
I believe so.
Okay. I'll move approval on the staff recommendation.
We have a motion to approve staff's recommendation, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case, item 8 on the agenda, 2023-0068. And this is located at the 5200 block of Hunter Road. And it's an application to lift and amend conditions from ordinance number 12703, section 4. Staff has recommended to deny the applicant's request and approve other with conditions. Is there any opposition present? All right.
Mr. Chairman, we also received email opposition.
Yeah.
Can I clarify too, before we get started, this is not a rezoning of the property. We got a lot of emails in opposition to apartments being built there. This has nothing to do with apartments. They can already be built on this piece of property. And I'll go through that through the case here. But again, this is not a rezoning of the property. It's just to lift conditions and amend conditions.
And I'm assuming the applicant's present. All right. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is case 2023-68. Again, this is to lift and amend conditions that are already placed on this already zoned C2 commercial property. It's 23 acres for the entire site. A little bit of history. Part of this property was rezoned from A1 to C2 with conditions in 2022 by the county commission, which is the area in green here. That was rezoned. The C1 to the, if you look on the map, the C1 portion to the right, which is parcel 131-07401, that was already zoned C1. That's been zoned C1 since the early 70s. So in 2012, the property owner came in and asked to rezone this A1 to C2 with conditions. That was approved with all these conditions. And then the site was annexed into the city of Chattanooga in 2013 with the same conditions in 2012. At that time, the conditions of A1 applied to the entire property, the 5-acre property. So all the conditions that were in place in 2012 by the county, by the adoption of a city council ordinance in 2013, applied to the entire piece of property. And here's another view of that. So in 2013, when the city annexed this and rezoned it from a temporary zone to a permanent C2 zone, all those conditions applied to this entire 5-acre piece of property. You can see on this map here, this is provided with the case back in 2012. During annexations, you give it a temporary zoning classification within 90 days of the effective date of the annexation. You have to place a permanent zoning designation on the property. This is what happened when both those properties were annexed into the city. Some of those conditions carried over to the entire site. You can see that's highlighted in the yellow circle, listing that one specific parcel number. With that ordinance in 2013, there were 11 conditions that were placed on the entire site. The applicant is asking to amend condition number 1 and amend condition number 2. Right now, condition number 1 states no restaurants and other establishments serving prepared food and beverages. They wish to amend that condition. No restaurants and other establishments serving prepared food and beverages, except for the approximately 2.1 acre out parcel designated for future development, as indicated on the master site plan by MAP engineers dated 1/31/2023. The next request is condition number 2. Again, in black is the current condition, no hotels and motels. The applicant request is to amend this condition to state no hotels and motels, except for the approximately 2.1 acre out parcel designated for future development as indicated on the master site plan by MAP engineers dated 1/23/2023. Condition number 3, no change. That condition would stay. Condition number 4, no requested change. That condition would stay. Condition number 5, about wineries and vineyards being prohibited. There's no request to change that, so that condition would stay. Condition number 6, this is a request to lift this condition. City of Chattanooga accepting the applicant representatives offer to donate needed right-of-way for future intersection alignment and the installation of a traffic signal at Hunter Road and Ooltewah Harrison Road. The applicant wishes to lift that condition. Condition number 7, the applicant wishes to lift this condition as well. Construction of intersection realignment and installation of traffic signal required prior to the development of the northwest out parcel shown on the site plan. Condition number 8, the applicant wishes to lift this condition. If no intersection realignment or traffic signal is installed prior to the development, northwest parcel will be required to be interconnected with existing C1 zone portion of the development. Condition number 9, the applicant wishes to lift only one combined egress point onto Hunter Road upon approval of the City of Chattanooga engineer. Condition number 10, applicant wishes to lift 6-foot shoulders along Hunter Road adjacent to development and entrance. And finally, condition number 11, the applicant wishes to lift this condition, deceleration lane at the easternmost entrance. Here's a view of the site. The site does have some floodplain and floodway associated with it. It's a vacant piece of property that has been cleared in some portions of the site. To the north is single unit residential. To the east is commercial. To the south along Old Lee Highway is commercial. And to the west, along to the west of Hunter Road is single unit residential. Here's a picture of the site that was placed on the property to lift and amend the conditions. A view of the site. This is south of the site of a commercial establishment. East of the site, you see more commercial uses that are nearby. This is west of the site, there's a daycare immediately abutting the site. Here's the site plan that was submitted with the application, and this go to the next page. Maybe you can see it on here. All the conditions, again, apply to this entire site. What's being lifted and amended are the conditions that would apply to this 2-acre parcel in terms of conditions 1 and 2, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 apply to the entire site. So staff recommends to approve amending condition number 1. Staff recommends to approve amending condition number 2. We did tweak that a little bit to make it more specific to a site plan that was drawn by MAP engineers and David Matthews surveying to make sure it's clear where those conditions apply. There again, there is no change to condition number 3, 4, or 5. Staff does recommend lifting condition number 6. Staff recommends to approve condition number 7, 8, 9, and 10. And staff recommends to deny lifting of condition number 11 about the deceleration lane. We also recommend adding an additional condition. Signalization of the intersection of Hilltop Drive and Hunter Road is required unless otherwise determined by the City of Chattanooga Public Works Transportation Division. So all that to say, staff recommends amending condition 1 and 2, lifting 6 through 10, denial lifting condition 11, and adding a new condition. That's a lot. I know it's a lot. I'll try to answer any questions.
All these conditions were not placed on this property under our watch. It was under yours.
Mine?
Yeah.
I'll take the blame.
Yeah.
You know,
We didn't do this.
it happened. Somehow all those conditions did get
Sure.
applied in the city council ordinance when that was adopted. So they unfortunately are on that side.
Mr. Lehman.
Okay, I got a question. Go back to, just to make sure I understand, go back to that initial one where you showed the parcel that was there, that blue and tan one, I guess, will work. So the 11 conditions were associated with that tan section under a county commission approved resolution in 2013.
2012, that
12.
tan condition property got rezoned, A1 to C2, I think it was, or C1, with those 12 conditions. Then
Well,
after
11,
that,
the 11 conditions.
after that, it got annexed into the city, given the temporary zoning designation of C2. And then what happened, the permanent designation carried all those conditions over to the entirety of the tan and the blue.
So one question is, and that's just a procedural. So everywhere it said Hamilton County engineer, all that was just changed to City of Chattanooga engineer when it was incorporated.
Yes, I would assume so.
Okay.
If that city council ordinance has all that.
And then the only thing I anticipate staff looked at when they made the recommendation. So it appears to me that 6, 7, 8, and 9, I mean, are really related to a traffic signal at Ooltewah Harrison and Hunter Road, which would have accessed just the parcel that was in the county. And then a lot of these other conditions were related to one access. And so just from a staff review, I anticipate the reason why the applicant is asking to lift those is it's now a new site incorporating a signal down at Hilltop and having additional access. I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, I'm going to let him say most of that.
I'll let the applicant speak. Yeah, it looks like there is a new intersection on this revised site plan down to the south at Hilltop, and it looks like probably a secondary access point closer to.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that, because when you read the conditions as accepted by the ordinance, they were actually conditions that were done in 2013 under the county commission.
Correct.
Okay.
And then when they annexed in the city adopted the ordinance, those conditions came with that
Gotcha.
property.
Thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, so let me simplify this from my understanding. I studied this case quite a bit. And from what I understand, you alluded to this a minute ago, but the apartments, stopping the apartments is really not what we're doing here today. We're addressing the conditions on the property that came into the city in approximately 2013, which some of those conditions I think might have carried over with, but that's regardless of where we're at today.
Right. Yeah. Regardless of what happens today, all these conditions, none of these conditions as listed would prohibit that site from being developed with apartments.
And that's the crux of my question is because I noticed and I'm seeing a lot of head shaking and I've done this a lot. For people who think that the apartments, you're here to stop the apartments, those have been on the books, so to speak, for a long, long time under the current zoning.
Yeah, as it's written today, if nothing ever happened, no applicant ever came in to lift these conditions. The only thing that could not be developed today would be no restaurants that serves prepared food and beverages. You couldn't do a hotel or motel, no adult-oriented establishments, no liquor store, or no wineries.
Okay.
That's the only thing as of today that would be prohibited on that entire
Okay,
site.
so apartments are on the table already.
On the table already.
Okay, so
correct.
right now it is the crux of this is the conditions and the amendment or the lifting of. Is our conversation today.
Yeah, the crux is
Okay.
actually question number 1 and 2 is to allow hotels and motels and restaurants to be permitted on a 2-acre parcel to the southeast.
2.1 acres.
Yes, and then to let all this stuff related to transportation be removed.
I understood because of the original signalization on the property that was in the county at the time.
Correct.
I'm on board and on page. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Price.
Price, MAP Engineers. Brian, if you would pull up the tan and blue drawing, I think that'd be a good place to start. Thank you. So the original plan in 2012 was to rezone this approximately 4-acre parcel from A1 to C2 and combine it with the rest of the previously C2 property that was there. The main bulk of this property, which has been rezoned, or is, been zoned commercial since 1971, had no conditions on it, 0. In 2012, we were successful as it relates to rezoning this 4+ acres to C2 to combine it with this other tract. But we worked through the county engineering department to come up with specific conditions as it related to the plan. The reason why, there were 7 out parcels located along Hunter Road. Those would have included things for uses such as restaurants, hotels, office buildings, medical office. We could have done a number of different uses. And so we had to work through the county engineering department to figure out what conditions needed to be added to this because we would be generating so much more traffic that would be coming up closer to the intersection of Boulevard Harrison Road. Thus, the conditions came into effect. In 2013, the city then annexed the property. When they did, in my opinion, they misapplied all these conditions and threw it on both tracts. They should have applied it just to the 4.5, 5 acre tract. Those are where the conditions should have lied and stayed. Instead, they were applied broadly and correctly. So as we then come forward today, as it relates to the new plan, which is for an apartment development, we have all these conditions that apply to a plan that we're not even building anymore. We're not doing that 100,000 square foot hardware store and the 7 out parcels. Instead, we're looking at 236 apartment buildings or apartment units with a single signalized intersection, which is at the intersection of Hilltop Drive and Hunter Road. We have prepared a traffic study. We prepared that, submitted it to CDOT. They've approved it. We've submitted plans to the Land Development Office. We are essentially right at the end of the process. And basically, once we get these conditions hopefully lifted, we'll be able to then get a land disturbance permit and proceed forward with work. So the request here is to take away conditions that were applied for a specific plan in 2012, which is no longer relevant, and instead allow us to work with conditions which we were fine with the staff conditions to go with those and move forward with this apartment development with the traffic signal to be installed at Hilltop Drive and these other conditions that have been set forth. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Mr. Price?
I have one. I want to understand this. And I know it's been said, but I want to get in my head clear. The apartments are going to be built on this one way or another. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And is this, in your mind or in the I guess CDOT's mind, is moving this the signalized intersection, obviously you feel it's a better plan, than what was before.
It is a better plan, and currently, because the secondary access now is over there closer to the intersection of Boulevard Harrison Road, we don't generate enough traffic to even warrant a signal. We don't warrant a signal today with this plan. So therefore, being forced to put a signal in is only going to further delay traffic in the area and not be a benefit to anyone.
So is there a signal at all? You will have access with a signal anywhere?
The signal will be at Hilltop Drive and Hunter Road.
All right.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Price, my in-laws live in Flagstone, and I travel that road quite frequently. I was coming through there last night as I was studying this case once again this week, waiting for dinner to be ready. And I paid a special attention to coming down through the area where it connects. It's very curvy, huge ditch, which is also, I think, acts as a creek through there. I've noticed in condition number 6, and I do understand what the law is regarding what you're able to do. But number 6 says a deceleration lane at the easternmost entrance. And I'm assuming that is limiting that condition to Hilltop intersection.
It is, yes, sir.
So I'm going to ask you if you would be amenable to a deceleration lane at both entrances, given my personal experience with that road. And I think that it's not only warranted, I think it's a matter of public safety. And I would ask if you would be amenable to that. And if you are, I would like to propose that as an alternate to the condition on number 6.
We would accept such a request. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you agree that that would probably be in the best interest of public safety?
It's not warranted by the traffic numbers, but to your point, it is
my point's past the
curvy.
traffic study.
Yeah,
I'm going with good old common sense.
Common,
I travel that road a lot.
yeah, I can't argue that one from a common sense perspective. So
Okay.
yes.
Very good. Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
All right, we'll hear from those that are here in opposition. If you want to speak and you're here in opposition, we want to hear from you. Total time allotted for opposition is 9 minutes.
Hello, everybody. I'm not a professional at this, but I do feel like I have some questions that may or may not even be touched on here, but as a resident, my name is Sydney Mayfield, and I have two residences. I have a residence on 5306 Country Village Drive, and I also have a residence at 8435 Ottawa Harrison Road. And so it is kind of nerve-wracking for me. I've lived in Ottawa for 40 years. I've traveled Hunter Road for 40 years. I taught at the elementary school for 28 of those years. So I know that road well. I know what happens at the S curve. I've seen people die on it, seen people wreck on it. In the last month, I got T-boned pulling into my driveway. So public safety is a huge issue for me. I feel like that's being ignored based on what I've observed, what I've experienced. There are blind hills everywhere. So one of my questions is I read something, and y'all can maybe help me with this, because I believe that for every action, there's a reaction. And isn't that kind of what the Planning Commission is about? You're making decisions, and then you have to consider what the reaction is going to be physically to the roads, to the people that live there. But is a slip ramp is something that's come up. And this is something that would be at the top of Hilltop Drive. Now, I don't know the north, south, east, west thing of all of this, but it's the intersection of Country Village Drive and Hilltop Road where Miller Industries is. And I've heard that they're going to make a slip ramp there where you get right on the interstate from there. So that was done one time before when they were working on the interstate and putting in new ramps. Is that something that has been talked about on this and I missed it, or something that you've heard that I'm?
Mr. Lehman, have you heard anything about that?
Well, I mean, there's been discussion. I mean, what you got, the thing that interstate systems are controlled by the Federal Highway Administration.
Mhm.
So there's very strict controls on that. The temporary ramp was put in. So
many feet between.
well, those are for different interchanges, but we have had those discussions, but those discussions would go through TDOT all the way up to Federal Highway Administration, not necessarily with this board or a local jurisdiction, as in this case, City of Chattanooga or Hamilton County.
Well, in this community, what you have is if people are going to find detours, they already do. Ottawa Harrison Road has become a speedway, and Country Village Drive is shortly behind it. So what's happening is that people are going to avoid the traffic light, and they're going to be starting to go through these subdivisions, and it's just chaos and mayhem already. We've got little kids playing in the roads. I mean, you know, if you're living in a residential area and you have a driveway, you should be able to pull in and out of it safely. There's blind hills, you know, and then we're in no man's land. You know, half of us are in the city. I'm not in the city, but I'm in the county part. So
Ma'am,
that's against every.
I think there's 7 people behind you that want to speak as well.
That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
So my concern, I think I made that clear.
Thank you.
So this was rezoned A1 to C2, the small parcel.
Ma'am, can you state your name and address for the record?
Oh, Kim Helton, 8618 Snow Hill Road. This was rezoned A1 to C2 in November 2012 based on a retail site plan. It was then annexed by the city in December 2012. The plan of services was 2013. It all happened in a 4-month period of time. So that would have been something fresh that would have occurred. The traffic study that they submitted then warranted these things according to the Hamilton County engineer. It called for any entrance at all through there had to be at Ottawa Harrison Road and have a red light because of the topography and the curves. So that was the reason for that. Now the Chattanooga, Department of Transportation is saying, okay, he can have that entrance just below Ottawa Harrison Road. So you have a discrepancy here. So it seems like you should at least look at the 2021 traffic study, which is 2 years old, that was submitted before making a decision, because you have one engineer from the county in 2012 saying one thing, the city saying another thing. So it seems like there should be something there that you as a planning commission should look at to go, okay, well, we can see both sides of this and then make your decision. If you have not seen that, which I'm assuming you haven't, the RPA said they did not have that study to give us. We've not been given that study. We've asked for it, but have not received it yet. And so that discrepancy should be looked at. So part of Hunter Road is right next to the interstate. It's in between the interstate and this property. So if there's any chance to ever widen Hunter Road through there, it's going to have to come from that property in that one section. So if you put apartments there, that chance is gone. You know, that needs to be looked into as well. And when the 5 acres was rezoned based on a retail site plan, there was no community opposition. That was what the Wolf-Teever plan called for there, commercial development. The Wolf-Teever plan defines apartments as residential, not commercial. So that was rezoned as commercial based on the Wolf-Teever plan, and apartments are included as commercial. So this is not in line with the Wolf-Teever plan. They changed from retail to apartments.
Ma'am, I've
and
got
the-
to interrupt because
Okay.
all these people behind you want to speak as well.
Right. And the community was never, you know, had any input on that. So it just doesn't seem right to do that to the community.
Thank you. We only have 4 minutes left, so make sure to keep your comments brief.
I will be very brief. Steve Highlander, Shorttail Springs Road, County Commissioner. This is a city ordinance, and I hope people understand the county commission has no control over this. This was the city of Chattanooga. I do know that Hunter Road has changed a great deal since I started teaching in 1972 at Ooltewah High School. And it is thousands more cars go over there. It takes me 45 minutes to go from 3 miles from my home on Shorttail Springs Road when I take a grandchild to Hunter Middle School. 45 minutes to go 3 miles already. And I realized that original plan for the C when it's changed C3 was to be a strip mall. Well, that's not vogue now. So they do allow apartments, not trying to change that. I do appreciate what Councilman Ledford brought up of having egress on both ends. That's essential. That's the very least we can do. And I wouldn't mind having 2 traffic lights, but thank you very much. I wish we could stop it. We obviously cannot stop it. I'll make that public statement. They can put the apartments in. We need every safety measure possible. Thank you.
My name is Andrew Morkert. I reside at 6829 Flagstone Drive. So I mirror Commissioner Ledford's comments as well. I believe that we have to have a more current traffic study done because of the recent growth that the Ooltewah area has experienced. I almost think that it should be considered a roundabout versus a traffic signal because of the intensity of the traffic and some of the signalization at the Ooltewah area. Those lights last longer than expected with excessive traffic in the Ooltewah area in general, and especially on Hunter Road. I do believe that if apartments are going to go in, that consideration should be given to provide pedestrian and bike connectivity to exit 11. I believe that that hasn't been talked about or discussed, and vegetative buffer and light pollution are also some considerations. Thank you.
Trevor Ehrlich. I live at 7417 Salmon Lane. Lived there 8 years. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to call in question the map study that was done. I believe it was in 2021. That was in the middle of COVID. We were all working from home. We weren't making traffic during that time. According to the Census Bureau, 33% of U.S. workers full-time were working at home during that time, working remote. Now, my employer, Kinco Logistics, other companies are having us come back to the office. So I think 2 years ago is not representative of going forward what the actual traffic patterns are. And I would just encourage us to go back and really look at the safety and traffic numbers afresh to make sure that we're doing what's best for the community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emily Hardy. I live at 5511 Hidden Oaks Lane in the Flagstone subdivision. A couple things I just wanted to call in to question is why we need 2 points of entry for the apartment complex. None of the other apartment complexes have more than 1 entry in that area. And just to kind of put on the record, I have 3 young children, all whom will be driving in the next 8 years. And you have 7 neighborhoods of small families or standard families all along that strip, all who attend Wallace A. Smith, Hunter Middle School, or Ooltewah High School. So you have a lot of young new drivers in those already deadly hills. So adding this amount of traffic to that corridor is going to result in loss of life at some point. There's no doubt. Extending Hunter Road on either side, as you mentioned, there's a creek there. I have had to go on the news multiple times to when we have flooding in that floods back into Flagstone subdivision. There's a sinkhole there. We are then forced to reroute on very narrow roads. That to me is a safety issue because a fire truck cannot safely get down. And we have a lot of elderly folks living in that neighborhood as well. So widening it, unfortunately, is not an option with the flooding. And just this increased amount of traffic period, I think calls for one entry not in that direct corridor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to try to answer one quick question?
Yes.
The 2 entrances is required by law due to the number of units, ma'am. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kay
I'm
Parson.
going to extend the time for opposition to speak to 2 minutes. So I think there's still 2 people behind you that want to speak. So please keep them very brief because we've already heard 9 minutes of opposition.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kay Parson. I'm the owner of Mill Creek Country Day School, and I am butted up right next to this new development. I understand we probably cannot stop it, but I do have a vested interest in that intersection. I have 133 families that use my services. Sorry, I'm nervous. And to get out on that road every day is so, so dangerous. I wish I could tell you what goes on just in that corner that you don't know about, that I see how many people we help that just have a fender bender. We've gotten motorcycles out of the ditch that's hit the rocks and slid and brought them into the daycare, giving them water, whatever it takes. But please consider the safety, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Corey Madding. I'm at 8859 Windhaven Road, the residential neighborhood directly adjacent to the property. I just want to point out that my son was T-boned coming out of our neighborhood 3 months ago in already dire traffic. And we're now adding 500 new cars to that along with proposed restaurants. And I asked the commission to consider how many lives have to be altered and or lost before we finally say safety should be first and primary above this.
Hello, I'm Sharon Crowder. I'm from 8244 Millrace Drive, about a mile from there. I have to agree. There's so much traffic on that road. Ottawa is growing rapidly. It's just a very quickly growing area. Yeah. And so I also request that we really carefully consider the safety issues. Thank you.
Hello, Alexandra Nelson, 5306 Country Village Drive. My concern that I wanted to express is just regarding the lifting of the amendments 7 through 11. I guess what I can't in all the reading understand is this a CDOT issue? Would it be city? Would it be county? Would it be highway patrol? Would it be, TDOT? Because by lifting those amendments, if it becomes a transportation issue, I would just like to see the transportation issue and the realignment of the traffic be clarified before the construction of the property and the development begins. Thanks.
Mr. Price.
Brian, if you would mind going back again to the drawing that shows the blue and the tan. So let me point out a couple things. So safety was certainly brought up and it's a concern of ours as well. So let me go into a couple things. First of all, if you look at this particular drawing, you see that there are 3 curb cuts onto Hunter Road, 3 access points. We're proposing 2. Now, if you'll go then to our proposed apartment plan, you'll see that there are, again, 2 access points. The traffic signal is going in at Hilltop Drive at that intersection. The reason that we are doing what we're doing is we are almost basically mandating, if you will, this is where we want you to come in and out of the apartment complex because this is where the traffic signal is. This is where the traffic then will come out on the Hunter Road, which will then be going back generally back towards Lee Highway for people that would be working, whether it's in Cleveland or whether it's in Chattanooga. So what we've done is we have pulled the traffic from 3 different points along Hunter Road from the previous plan to 1, which is added signalized intersection, and it's a point in Hunter Road where you got the best visibility. It's not the windy section that continues further out going to the west, which has been where a lot of the concerns I think that residents have talked about. Now, let me also mention, just as it relates to the traffic study, it was completed in 2021. And I'm going to read exactly what the traffic engineer sent me when I asked this question. He said, a year after the more significant 2020 COVID timeframe, the traffic study was completed in 2021. Nonetheless, traffic volumes were grown sizably to account for background traffic growth and the potential that 2021 traffic volumes might still be affected by COVID. The consultant then looked at the traffic volumes over a 10-year period in the project vicinity to make sure we had a feasible representation of pre-COVID traffic volumes. Then they used a COVID adjustment traffic factor obtained by TDOT based upon traffic volumes in the Chattanooga area to grow the traffic volumes. So as you can see, we've already taken into account the fact that it was a COVID year. You're sort of still suffering the effects of people not driving as much, but we took that into account. So from a safety standpoint, this is the best plan. We've eliminated the curb cuts. We've got it at one point, a signalized intersection, pulled it as far away as you can from the west, from the daycare and the other areas. And it's a plan, again, that generates far less traffic than what we're proposing today. So given all that, I think this is the right plan and having these conditions amended.
Mr. Price, can you just quickly, for our benefit, speak to these conditions as staff has recommended them? Is the applicant amenable to?
We are fine with all the staff conditions, including the proposed change that would require deceleration lanes at both of the entrances into the development.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Councilman Ledford.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So this is in District 6. This is Dr. Carol Burz's district. I would highly encourage conversation with her about increased safety that CDOT, who will be managing this project, can install. And sometimes that means, and I ask them sometimes to think outside the box. Like you, I travel this road quite a bit. Two most valuable things in my life travel this road quite a bit. I know what you're talking about. I hear you. This is a legal right that they have to build this. It has been for a very long time. So I hope that by your show of passion and care that CDOT will listen. And I will personally help follow this through with CDOT myself, because it's just really important. It really is important. So I do move to approve, Mr. Chairman, to get it out onto the floor.
And is that with all the recommendations?
Yeah, I'll follow the process. Yeah. Move to approve. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go through the Robert's Rules of Order process on it. So very good. We do have a motion on the floor.
We have a motion, and you did second that?
Move to amend condition number 6 to read, all entrances serving the development shall have deceleration lanes provided.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next case on our agenda is case 2023-0069, and it's located at the 6700 block of East Brainerd Road and has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any opposition present? Mr. Price. Mr. Schultz.
Yes, this is case 2023-69. This is a request to rezone from R1 residential zone to R3. Proposed use is townhouses, 0.27 acres in size. Proposal is 3 units. That's a density of 11.1 dwelling units per acre. Looking at the zoning map, This property is zoned R1. To the north is R1. To the south is C2, convenience commercial, and R4. To the east and west is R1. If you look at the zoning map, there is no other, on the northern side of this East Brainerd Road, there is no other higher density residential zones or commercial zones. It's all surrounded on the northern side by R1. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north is single unit residential. To the east is single unit residential. To the south is a veterinary clinic and vacant piece of property. And then to the west is single unit and institutional. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site. This is north of the site on Marriage on Drive, which is a single family dwelling. South of the site, this is the veterinary clinic. East of the site on Glenberry Circle, which is single family detached dwellings. The site's just on the right hand side. This is west of the site on East Brainerd Road. This is a site plan submitted with a request. One entrance off East Brainerd for three townhouse units. The request is not compatible with adjacent land uses and development form, as the area on this side of the street is primarily single family detached dwellings. There is no adopted land use plan in this area to provide guidance on increasing density or changing the development form to permit attached housing on this side of East Brainerd Road. The parcel is mostly surrounded by R1 on the northern side of East Brainerd Road. The immediate surrounding parcels include large single-family homes on large lots, and proposed townhouses would not be compatible. The site could be developed with a single-unit dwelling and an accessory dwelling unit under existing R1. So staff recommended to deny this request based on those reasons.
Thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineers. So the staff in the recommendations notes that, and I quote, the development policy from the Comprehensive Plan 2030 adopted by Planning Commission in 2016 identifies this site as being intensity level 5. Level 5 describes a development potential appropriate for high intensity development based upon the highest access to infrastructure. Developing low intensity developments underutilize existing infrastructure and create gaps in connectivity. So there's a little inconsistency or we're not congruent with regards to what staff has come up with in terms of what they have found as it relates to the site. What I would say is if you go to this property and you stand in the property and you look out, you see directly across the street from you a veterinary clinic. If you look a little to your left, you see the BMW dealership. If you look down to the road to the right, you have a multi-story office building and Brainerd Hills Baptist Church. If you look on the same side of the road that you are, you've got the old P&F school supply. We've got a lot of different things going on in through here. What I have noticed also is, and if Brian and staff concurs with my thinking here, I can develop the same thing in an R4 zone. If I'm not mistaken, 3 townhomes would go in an R4. Is that correct?
Yes, R40 you can have multifamily.
Okay.
But this property is zoned R1.
Yes, understand. We are within 80 feet of an R4 zone. We have R4 multiple locations directly to the east of us, to the northeast of us, and to the west of us. And again, we're within 80 feet of an R4 zone. So I would ask that we get an R4 zone with the condition limiting it to 3 townhomes. And again, I think given the location being on East Brainerd Road and what is taking place all around us, this is definitely fitting use and not a single family home. It's simply not given what you have to look at and what's going on development wise around you. Directly across the street is commercial. So I think that asking for an R4 with that condition, use only would be appropriate. I think R3 is fine, but I can understand where staff would not want to introduce a new zone, but R4 is prevalent in the area. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I do want to just talk with staff for just a minute. Staff from time to time will recommend to deny and approve other. It's rare, if never, that an applicant comes and says, we'd like to change our request from R3 to R4. I'm assuming that's okay. Staff certainly makes those recommendations all the time. but it is a little odd.
That is correct. And I think staff looking at more also is the form, regardless of the zone, it's the form of introducing attached housing on this side of the street. Yeah, there is commercial zoning across.
Wait, just to make sure, can we actually pass R4?
If you, the planning commission, want to recommend
Okay.
R4, you could.
Okay, that's great. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I mean, yes, correct. It is commercial across the street. The form is a single family detached dwelling. If you look, it's just all surrounding on this side of the street by single family attached. I think it's more of the form of the attached housing than per se the zone. If that's what.
Okay.
If other staff agree with that or not. Just think on this side, it is all single family detached units.
Thank you. Mr. Lehman, did you want to say something?
I mean, I was going to sort of make a point, but both of the single family residentials, I guess, to the south or south east do front East Brandon Road, correct?
The one to the east does. I think the other one to the west, I believe it comes off Mayor John.
Right,
Mayor
but the
John.
ones just southeast of there, if north is up.
Yeah, the two to the east are going towards I-75. They do.
They
actually access.
front East Brandon Road.
Yes, that's correct.
Access. Thank you.
Mr. Well.
From the form standpoint, I think oftentimes one large single-family residence can look very similar to a multi-unit structure. I wonder from the way that it sort of addresses the street, would you be willing to self-impose something that sort of moves that parking to the rear so that it does sort of hold that more traditional form of the single-family residential in the rest of the district?
I think that's a great idea, and we would do that. The only problem is that there's about an 18-foot embankment that we are trying to catch the grades up, that to try to move the parking to the back and do that, the contours really would not allow that unless you're building massive retaining walls. The R1 directly behind us essentially would never see us because we sit down below them. And if you really look at, again, the area in through here, that's really the only R1 that we would potentially even impact is all the residents behind us, which would never see us.
I think I asked earlier, but I just want to make sure, is there any opposition present? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to get this in front of city council. I get that there is not a lot of guidance on this for staff. I understand that. I think that there's going to be a trend of some low intensity multifamily over there in this area over the next few years. We're going to see more cases like this. In the interest of getting this to city council with a recommendation, I'd like to move to approve R4 with a maximum of 3 townhomes on this location.
We have a motion and it has been properly seconded with conditions. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next case is a mandatory referral, case 2023-0070. And this is an unopened 300 block of Olds Avenue. Staff is recommended to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is a mandatory referral as well, case 2023-0071. And this is an unopened alley, 400 block of West 35th Street. And staff is recommended to approve. Any opposition? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have amendments and resolutions. Do we have any? We have it on the agenda.
We don't have anything.
Okay. And did you want to give a staff update?
Sure.
You mentioned earlier on.
It's the same thing. Just a reminder, whoever's left in the room, that we'll be having a working group meeting on Wednesday, this Wednesday, May 10th at 1 p.m. at the DRC in conference room 2B, starting at 1 o'clock to discuss, continue discussion on street standards in the Chattanooga suburbs.
Thank you. And we have time on our agenda for public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any? Can I get approval of the planning commission minutes of April 10th, 2023? We do have
Mr.
a
Chairman,
motion.
can I make comments?
Has been seconded. Are you commenting on the minutes?
No.
What was the amendment? Is that noted?
Which case was that? What was that? 038?
All right, we have a motion and it has to approve the minutes has been amended. That's been seconded. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Dan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission, I just want to, two things. One is we've got a lot of work underway now this year. We've got our consultants for both the county updated their, I call it the comprehensive plan, because we're trying to pretty much cover most of the county's areas and infrastructure needs. And then also our planning consultants for the city area planning are both under contract now. So we've got a lot of work happening this year within RPA, but we're also coordinating closely with WWTA, with Hamilton County Schools, with other departments. So there's just a lot of great work happening, and I want y'all to feel like if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll give you an update on those. I do want to just take some time to just note that we have an excellent group of staff that have been working on the Planning Commission agendas and zoning applications and subdivision permits and over the last year. And I'm just want y'all to know that we have a really great staff, and I don't get to say that very often. So I wanted to say that today. Also, if y'all have not met Nathan Janeway in the back, Nathan has been working with the county now for I'm not sure how many months. And we have got a great 4 months that Nathan's been here. We have got a great relationship with the county and with Nathan. And I think just it's a real good time right now to be working together between the city and county and RPA. So I just wanted to give you all that update.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.